We've seen some of the effects of El Nino, but pinpointing all the possible consequences is not an exact science. I discussed this with LaDawn Haglund. She's a senior sustainability scholar at Arizona State University.
What happens is you'll get a drought for a long period of time, and it will create a certain kind of havoc, but then you'll get a lot of water shortly thereafter, as we see in the case of California. And when you get these combinations of this very volatile environment, you have things like landslides and mudslides that come from that. So it's not just drought, it's also what comes when the water comes back. It requires not only mitigation, which is obviously very important, but also adaptation. And adaptation can be really difficult without concerted efforts by communities and states to invest in infrastructure that is resilient, and to invest in the people in the community so that they can be resilient.
There was authors of a study on drought out of the University of British Columbia. They looked separately at crops like maize, wheat, and rice, and they found a tenth of these crops were wiped out due to droughts and heat waves between 1964 and 2007. That is a loss of 3 billion tons of cereal crop production. They used that study to illustrate that with climate change, the droughts are expected to be more extreme. You talked about these extremes, and the loss is more significant going forward. And as you said, you know, this coupled with the flooding really makes for kind of a double whammy. Are they on the mark, and how concerned are you?
When you have large-scale plantation-type agriculture, or agriculture that's just one crop, monocultures, if you will, and a weather event or a pest or something comes along to wipe out one type of plant, and that's the only type of plant you have a very extreme situation in terms of the potential for starvation and malnutrition and hunger that can come from that. But on the flip side, we also can learn a lot from history in terms of creating more biodiverse agriculture systems. And maybe this is a clarion call for us to try to have more biodiverse crops, to look back at some of the traditional techniques that were discarded as primitive.
When you look at these droughts, what's the ripple effect? How does this impact food supply prices and people in general, would you say?
We're finding larger scale, longer scale types of challenges. And so the vulnerability and the volatility makes it a little bit harder to figure out how to create more resilient communities. But it also brings up the question of climate migration. And we're going to see more of this, I'm afraid. When people can no longer eke out a living where they are, they will move to try to survive. But what this leads to, or can lead to, if we're not prepared, is conflict. And it's not that we don't have resources on the earth, it's that we're not very good at distributing them to the people most in need. And so if we can rethink how we manage both our ecosystems but also our economic systems in such a way to ensure local sustainability, we stand a better chance as a global community of being resilient in the face of these really challenging times.